Welcome back to System and Soul. We've got a really fun episode for you all today, but it is coming with a disclaimer, and it is this episode, while potentially relevant for everyone, there are many times that we are talking to men. That's mostly because of our guest and what he does. Want to recognize that some of my favorite leaders out there and most inspirational leaders are female, and this is in no way meant to exclude them, but we get into a few topics that feel like they're maybe specific to men or calling out men in their role in marriages, which is a place that we don't normally go in this podcast. So we get into a leader's world, which is more than just the office, more than just the boardroom, and how things at home with our marriage, with our own personal self, our well-being affects everything that we do. Getting to do it with a man that I truly respect. So here we go. Hope you enjoy.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
System and Soul, welcome back. Today's a fun one. I'll be honest, we're actually re-recording this because we had some trouble with the original recording, and it's kind of my pleasure because the first recording was the first time we hung out, but it was like old souls, fast friends. My brother Lantz Howard is here, and I love this guy because he talks about business and self-development, and a big advocate of marriage being right in the middle of that. And I think it's something that's absolutely huge that's not talked about enough. He is an executive coach, personal coach. Lance, welcome back for the first time.
Benj, I'm honored to be here. It just means that the first conversation was so robust that like people are going to be curious of like what actually happened.
Yeah. We'll have to pull some nuggets out of there. Yeah. We have the bits and pieces, but the quality was so bad. It was like, oh man, we just got to roll it back, do it again. But give the listener some background on what you do, but how the heck did you get here? I found you originally, I think, just on LinkedIn, and your content was so strong and I resonated with what you were talking about. So, been a fan for a long time. So great honor to get to know you through that and through our conversation, but let the audience get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So I primarily serve as an executive coach, helping leaders be healthy and get healthy, both on the individual level and on a systemic level within their organization. My background is 2 decades worth of pastoral work. And even prior to that, right out of the gate, I was coaching middle school boys. So coaching is in my DNA. It's not something that I do. It's like actually who I am type of thing. And so I think I'm just wired to see people's potential as God has designed them and believe in them to that capacity and draw that out. Why I focus on marriage so much is I think ultimately those of us that have dynamic and wonderful, passionate marriages, we didn't arrive there overnight. Ultimately, it's like that mirror back to you that's saying like, oh, this is the place that I still have to grow up. It's not really even about your spouse, right? And so the same principles that are true within a marriage are also true in an organization. Everything comes back to relational and emotional health. And so if I can help somebody get healthy in their marriage, I think those same principles will also apply in the context with their partners at work as well.
Dang. Give me a couple examples of how you've seen that play out.
So I would say even here recently, coaching some owner operators in a specific industry, I was asking them in a group coaching setting. I said, "Hey, so what is the last 10% that you're actually not sharing right now?" And right, we're talking to the gamut of their business. They're leading teams of 70, 100, 120 people, and they're like, "You know what? I actually just need more help in my marriage. If I can get more intentional in my marriage, I think all these other things begin to be a cascading waterfall effect after that." And so the principles of relationship, the principles of ultimately restoring something back to health, come from my own story of like, right, divorced family. We all end up serving somebody out of our similar story and life history. But the reality is like life is hard, work is hard, relationships are hard. But if you can drive some self-awareness, I believe that people can have healthy and dynamic and thriving relationships if we put in the work. But the reality is, I think we're all wired to be super, super selfish. So every day it's like, how do I die to myself to serve my family, to serve my wife, to serve the greater good of this business, so that we can all flourish.
Yeah. I feel like the dynamic between marriage and work is interesting, even as simple as, and this is, I think, maybe universal, maybe you tell me, but like, I think about like leaving in the morning. If my marriage is strong, it's such a place of confidence to leave the house from. And if my marriage is strong, it's such a great place to come home from work too. So that in between, you know, I know guys that are like working extra hours because they don't want to go home, right?
Right.
Which is just absolutely awful. But it's such a place of confidence and like renewal. Like, you know, long day, you have that confident, that safe haven in your home. And if it's not that, then it feels like just a potential constant energy, like battery drain.
Sure, 100%. What would you notice for yourself, Benj, if there was a habit or system even for yourself, like when you leave your house in that rhythm, is there something that you've done that allows you to have that flow?
I think for me, like, I have always kind of been aware of the gauge of connectedness between us. And if I feel like we're connected and she's feeling healthy herself, so it's a lot about how she's doing, I probably come from the side where my marriage and my well-being was too enmeshed. We were too enmeshed with each other versus too estranged. And we've had to like pull that apart, which was painful, and then kind of put it together in a more healthy way was more our journey. So I've got to be careful. I'm not overly dependent on how connected we are as a source of my own identity and strength going out into the world every day. So when we're both kind of in a healthy place, but I think it's just the belief in each other, the encouragement to go, hey, you're doing important work and you've got this. What a huge source of confidence, to know that the person that knows you the deepest believes in you. So that's been it for me.
I think I definitely resonate with the whole enmeshed idea, that attachment style. And I hear it, guys don't say it that way, but I hear it a lot in just what we consider the good guy, the nice guy type of mentality of like, hey, I want to go and do this with the guys at 8 o'clock tonight. But they don't have the resolve, the courage, the sense of like ultimately self-differentiation to be able to say, hey, like it's actually good and healthy for us to have our two independent lives. I talk about this all the time, is like the best marriage, the best relationships at work are going to be when you're independently healthy and you bring that both to the table. But man, it's so complicated in relationships in the boardroom that like this person has this idea and you have that idea and you're like, I kind of like that, but you can give in versus actually holding on to your internal compass and your convictions. And then you keep that up for a year, 5 years later, and you drift and you're like, who am I? Like, right. So I think that's super important to figure out like, what are those boundaries, those core things that you really believe in, and champion each other to go and do your independent life in a way that actually allows you to flourish, not in a self-serving way, but in a way that's like, oh, you enjoy that, go do that. That would be good for you.
100%.
But at the expense of, I'm here in Texas, on the extreme, and I don't mean this for anybody that's listening, on the extreme, I know a lot of guys, hunting season comes around October through February and they just disappear. And I'm like, Well, that's not healthy, independent relationships, right? There's a balance in there somewhere that you have to find and navigate together.
Yeah. Yeah. We described it as so we're a month away from hitting our, well, 2 months away from hitting our 25th wedding anniversary. We got married really young and it was awesome, but the last probably decade, a very slow transition of us. You start to do a dance together. And then next thing you know, you're doing the dance that you think the other person expects, not your own dance, like you're saying. And you wake up one day and you're like, is this my dance? Is this your dance? And it's like, it just happened somehow. So yeah, man, that untangling that to find that healthy medium. Cause I think naturally every single man would say that they're wired to push to one of those extremes. They're either too independent or too enmeshed. And I think that maybe marriage is the battle of finding that middle ground. So this is not meant to be my counseling session, but this is so rare that we're on the System and Soul podcast talking about marriage. And I don't think this is just for men. This is like universally, like we all, if you're married, if you're in that relationship, to balance that and invest in that and figure out, to learn from that and take those lessons into the boardroom and vice versa all the time is such a cool opportunity. I want to go back to the very beginning. You said you were like wired to be a coach. What does that mean to you? And what do you see as some of the strongest attributes of good coaches?
So I grew up as an athlete. That doesn't mean like I'm a superstar, like, right? I just kind of grew up in a small town, small West Texas towns, always had an opportunity to do all the sports. So naturally, by default, I think I'm gifted with various aspects of being able to see like a goal and go accomplish it, right? And just being in coaching environments. And I've actually thought a lot about this lately is because some of the best clients that I enjoy working with, they come from similar backgrounds of coaching environments, athletic performance backgrounds. Because other guys, the coaching thing, they're like, well, what is this? What are we actually doing? And I'm like, well, I'm just partnering with you to try to help you get to a goal. Whatever that goal is, I'm your partner in it. I don't have a playbook that says, hey, here's your 7 steps to get this done. It really goes back to this relational and emotional health. And so for me, posture of a coach really goes back to being surrounded by just incredible people who see something in you that you don't even see in yourself, and they're calling it out. I was with my mentor just last week for lunch. We meet about once a month. And he's just speaking life over me and belief factor over me in a very loving and kind way. And when appropriate, he challenges me, right? And so when I think about all the meaningful relationships I've had throughout the course of, being an adult, there are people who listen really, really well. And they have a deep level of empathy, but they also have this keen sense of awareness of like, hey, instead of me offering this advice, I'm actually going to offer one more question. And I didn't really, going back to almost 20 plus years ago, one of my foundest mentors, what I would consider a coach, he just asked question after question after question. And so I think it is rooted in that sense of listening and that sense of empathy and that sense of really believing in somebody's potential that they don't even necessarily see in themselves at this current season.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the practices that you have? I'm going to assume the cobbler's children have some shoes in this case, but you keep using the word emotional and relational health.
Right.
What are some of the things that you've found helpful for yourself to, evolve and continue to grow that for yourself?
Sure. So that definitely comes from my marriage and family therapy background. At one point, I thought I was pursuing that. And the truth be told is that I never could pass the test of like 1 point, 2 points. And so that knowledge, that awareness comes from that systems background years ago. But practices for me are being in a relationship. I host a monthly fire for guys at my house, right? And it's taking initiative to say, you know what? God has entrusted me with gifts to lead and initiate bringing people together. And then when that happens, I have a stewardship to be authentic, saying, hey, you know what? Like, I'm struggling with that. Oh, I resonate with what you just said. Thank you for sharing. Practices more specifically, like even this morning, haven't even had a chance to transition to a shower yet because I was in the Word this morning. I was journaling this morning, was working out this morning, listening to worship music, listening to a podcast that was all anchored in pouring my heart to being in union and to being in relationship with God. Right. That's the first, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. That's the first 4 hours of my day. And probably 45 minutes of that was deep, meaningful connection with my wife. Right. So I think it's ultimately, it's things that we have to work at. Right. It doesn't happen overnight. So I think it's just like realizing those disciplines and those relationships that you value and trying to bring those to the forefront of your daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Are there any themes that you're seeing right now, either like universally, like guys that you're working with leaders, with business, with cultural, like, are there any themes you're seeing right now?
It sounds too cliche to say this, but loneliness is right at the top. And I think we're all surrounded by relationships, but we're all hungering for like deep, meaningful, authentic conversations. Whatever environments we show up to, right? Whether it's the boardroom, whether we go to a church environment, whether we go to a networking event, all the conversations typically are just very much surface level. And I don't think we leave those environments feeling seen and known and loved and cared for.
Yeah.
But the only path forward is for somebody to go first. You have to be willing to risk like your heart a little bit, but you don't see it as like risking your heart. Like you're actually sharing your heart, giving this other person a gift to form some type of relationship. So I would say that loneliness, but it's deeper than that. The second thing, and I don't know if it's just because I kind of talk about the pain points of marriage, is that typically, I mean, even somebody here recently, we're talking 8 figures, 9 figures, successful. He's like, I want help with my marriage. I want help with my faith. And the business is a distant third right now. But I know your heart for what you do is anchored in your belief system, right? And I'm just convinced more and more that we're not spending time in the Word, that the Word ultimately, like, right, Jesus can solve these problems. And I think one of my biggest fears is that I don't want to be seen as a self-help guru.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, man, my heart is to point people closer to the heart of Jesus, because that will solve your deepest ache, right? And so it's like, how do you do executive coaching in the business world in a way that points people to the ultimate source that makes you whole?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw somewhere last week, it was a quote, and I was like, that's so good. And then I'm like, duh. It said, pray as if the results depend on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't do that because we have so much pride in our own ability and we'll grit through it and blah, blah, blah. And that kind of struck, hit me where it hurt to say, hey, pray as if the results depend on it. And I'm like, man, all right, that's a good challenge. I like that.
And so I was just going to say, just echo even more on that. Right. There's been research that shows, like, if you're praying and in the Word, like, you're not probably going to struggle with alcohol. You're probably not going to struggle with pornography. You're probably not going to struggle with all these vices that are so common to men. It doesn't mean that they're not there. But if you're in the Word, like 4 or 5 times a week, if you're praying with your partner or praying, 4 or 5 times a week as well, the research is there statistically that you are going to flourish. So it's like, okay, how do I start to do things in my life that allow me to see myself as a beloved son or a beloved daughter of God? We're so struggling with seeing ourselves in that way. But I think the more that we see ourselves in that way, the taller that we stand, and the more that our lives begin to be radiant to other people around us.
Hey everybody, I've been talking a lot about this book, Renegades, as a book for founders, and it is for founders, but little secret, I also had in mind the people that work with or survive working with a renegade. They feel like untamable human beings. My hope for you is twofold. One, that you would actually be able to understand what's happening with that renegade a little more deeply and be able to bring some sympathy, some empathy. But also, number two, I think if you understand it better, you can actually understand why you are massively valuable for the organization to catapult past the capacity of that renegade. I'm not saying that the renegade doesn't matter and needs to get out of the way, but we need their energy to be a renegade while the organizations that we're part of mature into our possibilities. Talking a lot to founders and renegades, but if you're not one, this book may also be for you. If you find yourself surrounded or in a working relationship with somebody that feels like a bit of a renegade, I would love for you to join us in this journey with this book, and I would love to hear from you how it impacts your life. You can put your email in the link below, and we'll put a free first chapter in your inbox right now. Book drops on October 17th on Amazon. I'm sure you'll see me back in your LinkedIn feed to tell you all about it. See you soon.
Isn't it something like if you pray with your spouse, you're in the like bottom 1% risk of getting a divorce or something like that?
Yeah,
it's absurd. Yeah. Lance, so for the person listening that's like, I like this dude, how do you work with people and how do they connect with you?
Absolutely. So it's lantzhoward.com or LinkedIn. I'm on all the socials. Most of the arrangements, I really try to co-partner with somebody, meaning that I'm not prescriptive when somebody comes to me. Typically, I work with somebody every other week, and those relationships start from 6 months, and I've been with guys now for 2+ years, right? So it's not prescriptive, meaning that I don't go by a playbook of like 7 steps and we're done, right? If you have a business challenge that seems super complicated, I offer like strategic 1 days. Like, hey, let's just do a deep dive and get your head clear. Yeah. Because oftentimes it's not even so much that the problem is that you overthought the problem so much that you have anxiety about it. And you just need to disconnect and have safe space to begin to talk, dream, and explore those fears and challenges in a way that's like begins to make all the connections work. So
that's so good. I apologize to all the women out here. I keep saying men, and I kind of mean it, but like for all the men out there who know that they've got some disconnect in their marriage, where do they start? Like if they're just feeling miles and miles away, where do they start?
Sure. So I'll give a real practical example. And this comes from some pain and peace cycle coaching model. You got to even figure out what you're feeling. And you've got to figure out like, where's that coming from? What is that story? So as men, right, we think that we're doing anger or we're doing anxiety, like, right. But those are just symptom external things. The reality is, it goes back to our earlier conversation. It's like, you know what? I feel lonely and I feel disconnected from you right now. I want to do anger and I want to do these things and respond with anxiety. But the truth is, like, I know that God deeply loves me. I know that you deeply love me. And so I'm going to choose to pursue you. And so why don't we go on a date this Friday night? Right. So I think it's some sense of awareness of like, okay, what is this anger coming from? What is this frustration coming from? More than likely, it's typically a loneliness feeling and it's a disconnection feeling. So as soon as you say that with an I statement, I feel disconnected or I feel lonely, it removes the other person and it allows you to take complete ownership of what is yours to do. So what is yours to do is to lead out of that authentic posture of your heart, of what's really going on inside.
Nice. That's a great note to end on. Something anybody can easily own and do and go make their world and marriage a better place. Lantz, thanks for jumping back on with me, hitting record again, and most of all, just hanging out, your heart for what you do, who you do it for, and making the world a better place. We'll put the links to Lantz in the show notes to make sure you can connect with him. If nothing else, great, easy follow on LinkedIn. It's a very different voice than anybody else on there. And so I truly appreciate it. It's great. Not everything's brand new, but everything's a great reminder. So I always appreciate that. So thank you. Thanks for joining us. Till next time.